Hello, hello. Happy Sunday and welcome to the Upset Podcast. We're so happy that you tuned in this evening. And when I say we're, I'm talking about the most auspicious crew in all the land. Hey, guys.
Hello. Happy Sunday evening.
Sounds like we got a promotion.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Hello to our viewers.
Happy Sunday.
Hi there.
Hi. Am I here?
That's what we're wondering. You're here. You're here.
Can you guys see me at all?
We see you.
Yes,
we hear you.
We see you. You are present.
Well, that's amazing because
You can't
I,
see
us?
I can't see me. I'm going to try something and see if I can make it happen.
All right. All right. Well, happy Black History Month.
Yeah.
As we know, this is the month of February, and this is a month that we're really excited about. This is a chance to kind of highlight what makes us who we are.
Yes, it does, doesn't it? Now.
Anyway, we are happy to have the whole crew here. We're happy to have our viewing audience come in and say good evening. Let us know you're there. We love interacting with you. But guys, what's been going on this week? Anything that's sticking out for you?
All I gotta say is that we need to beef up security at the conference office. Because I walked into my office and there was a vintage Redskins shirt that was on my desk with a note from John Hall. So talking about fly Eagles fly. So, we just need to beef up security at the conference. I'll let the people in there just to get up in there.
I love it. These Eagles fans, I tell you, they die hard. They die hard. Hello,
I
Mike.
was in the supermarket last week and just kind of breezed by the bakery section and saw someone had a very large cake made with her number 1 on the cake. It was huge. That was for the championship game, the NFC championship game.
Wow.
And someone had a cake made with his jersey number on it.
Wow.
Amazing.
Just
And Eagles fans, they go all out. They paint their face gray and dye their hair and put on wigs.
Yes.
What does it say about Philadelphians that we are so rabidly involved in celebrating something that we don't have anything to do with? But I mean,
I feel like Philadelphia has had that inferiority complex. Like, you're not New York City, you're just Philadelphia. So they have to take whatever they can get.
Just don't say that in the stadium.
I won't get shot.
I picked up a story from The Guardian that I thought was really interesting. Goes right along with Black History Month. It was kind of delightful. We have so much bad news. But there was a young Pennsylvania boy, African-American boy, 9 years old, and one of the youngest to graduate high school at 9.
Wow.
9 years old.
That's half the time.
David, his name is David Belogan. He was in a charter school, and he finished all of his studies and got his diploma at 9 years old. He says he wants to be an astrophysicist.
Wow.
But I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, 9.
And that he's from Pennsylvania too. It made it extra cool.
Wow.
Shout out to PA.
Oh, that's what it is.
Okay.
Astro pastor. That's nice, man. Listen, somebody school me real quick, just for like 2 minutes. Hit me real quick on this balloon. I didn't get on it as quick. North Carolina. Just somebody help me with it really quick.
Well, go ahead, Charles.
No, Tolly, I'm sure you've got a more comprehensive answer than I do.
No, my answer was going to be totally nonsensical. You might want to say something with some probative intelligence behind it. So,
Well, I just
China,
they say it was a weather balloon. Doing weather measurements and things like that. Who knows? But they scrambled 2 F-22 fighter jets and they pulverized the thing. So they'll be scrambling around to get the pieces to put it together, and a lot of drama. But you can't tell me that they didn't know that thing came over near California. It nearly got all the way across the United States before they said, "Oh, there's a balloon."
Well, I think it's because for 4 years the United States was used to a big bloated bag of gas in the White House, and so
mercy.
Wow. I think
now we know why he wanted you to go, Charles.
Yeah. It's either that or a couple of us looked up in the sky and thought it was a hand of a man's hand and thought he was known.
Yeah.
Well, if it was, those F-22 shot it down.
I want to read more on it.
Well, they're claiming it was a spy, device, and of course, China's refuting that. And they said, why would we intentionally send a spy vessel over the United States and think, they won't see this,
right?
So, who knows?
I think someone had ordered dim sum and home delivery, and that's all that I could possibly
straight from China, a delivery. Okay.
Right.
Original Chinese, right? Chinese.
A couple of people who observe these things say that we are on a collision course to be at war with China by the year 2025, and
that's what I hear.
Yeah, that's frightening to consider.
Yeah. Well, the Secretary of State canceled his trip there. He was
did.
supposed to go over. I think it was Friday or Saturday, and because of the balloon incident, he pulled back. I think one of the fears is that China is getting very big and very rich.
Very rich, yeah.
And they have found themselves in other countries, helping other countries and continents, and the U.S. pretty much says, "Hey, that's our job." So.
I mean, China has, it's a different kind of colonization, but China has been very involved in building Jamaican infrastructure and African infrastructure. And
absolutely.
There's something to be said about that. It just bears watching.
Yeah, there's a deep historical tie between the Chinese and many Africans around the world. A lot of folks rave about that. That Chinese chicken is so. Where do you think they learned that from?
When it comes to Asian nations, I would have thought that African people and Black people would have been more inclined toward Korea, because after all, one of their major cities is Seoul.
Tally,
like
you are on today, boy.
I hope so.
Tony Daniels just put up he pretty much nailed it. The United States is fearful of China's growth, and they're spreading out, and especially in Africa. I mean, they're over there building roads and helping them with their infrastructures and things like that. So, yeah, just something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, not to bring us down, I know there are several families that we've been praying for, different funerals happening. Today, we know Dr. Daniel Honore's funeral, and the one held at Northeastern is going on or wrapping up. So we've been praying for that family. And I know there's a family of a young person in one of our churches, I think, to happen today as well. So, guys, we're just praying for a lot of bereavement out here. And of course, tragedy that's happening within our churches, our young people. It's just so much going on.
Propping up our sister Marlena, who's
yes, I was just going to say that. Yeah, it's been a rough week.
Yeah.
Say something, Marlena.
Me say, well, yes, to our surprise, we lost one of our very fine young adults to gun violence this past Wednesday. 24-year-old shot by a friend, and our church is hurting pretty badly. They're very big on pathfinders, and he was a pathfinder, and they also lost couple of the young people in 2020, just before I got there a few months. And then actually, I was installed on the third Sabbath in October, but I went early in October because we lost another young man, 20 years old, to a car accident. So, this just stirred up a lot of wounds. And we're going through, we're starting some counseling as we need grief counseling, to handle, the loss. And so it's pretty major.
Praying for you. Definitely praying for you. And the church, Willow Grove, you all are definitely in our prayers. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy. Okay. It's time for us to jump into our discussion for this evening. And we're excited to have Tally here to lead us in this great topic. So without further ado, Tally, share with us what we're talking about tonight.
All righty then. I am hoping that you can. I'm hoping that you can all see my screen. Can you?
No,
It's a great night scene, though.
Yeah.
Well, there we go. That's the exciting part of technology.
There you go.
Oh, you can see it now?
Yes.
Like everything.
Oh, well, then we don't want that. Let's see if we can. How's that? Is that just the Bible and the Upset podcast?
I think it's just delayed. I think it may pop. So try it.
Yeah, it's probably on a delay. Because I saw you hit the play button there.
Yeah.
Oh, you did, but how about? But you don't see.
No, nothing has changed.
Well,
try it again, Tally.
We'll try it again. Let me just see if I can load it in again. I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, you know what? Why don't you try this, Tally? Why don't you play it, then share it?
That's what I just done.
You hit the play. You hit the play button before you share.
I'm going to try it again. Let's see, share, and see if it does it play now. It still is not playing. Am I correct?
Well, we don't see anything, right? We just see
I'm going to try it one more time, and then if it doesn't work,
really quick while he's working on that, I stopped for a beef patty and cocoa bread here in Brooklyn, and I'm very upset that it was cocoa bread and the breaded side, but no beef inside. I mean, it was like it brought me back to where's the beef? I literally wanted to go back in and be like, I'm sorry, Tally, I know you're getting ready for what you guys do. But it's disappointing.
Where's the beef? Wow, I remember that.
Now, the cocoa bread itself tastes good by itself. I don't know if you've ever eaten the cocoa bread by itself.
I've had it, yeah.
I'm eating cocoa bread, and I'm here just looking for a little bit of the beef that we're gonna have in the kingdom, and then it was just upsetting. And one more thing, Tally, while they're working on your house, your condo, it's really 25 miles per hour driving in Brooklyn.
Wow.
What do you mean?
The new Brooklyn?
On the residential streets?
Everywhere. It's 25 miles per hour.
Oh, wow.
Is it because of ice or something?
No.
Gentrification?
25 miles per hour.
Is this a part of gentrification?
I believe so. No, seriously.
Maybe,
I do believe
do they have these high accident areas? Maybe it's because of high accident.
No, I'm going to go into GP side, where it's becoming gentrification around Eastern Parkway, those areas, and it's now at like 25 miles per hour. The police are out there and everything. And I'm saying I remember getting from one side of the town to the other side of town like 10 minutes. Now it takes like a whole hour to get there. I'm going to walk. I'm sorry. That had everything to do with Black church.
Well, let's try it again. Tasha, can you?
All right, let's give it a. And it was there, and now it's gone.
It was there and now it's gone.
Let's
Okay.
try it
Oh,
again.
needs a
Oh,
little more stall. Pat, what do you think
well,
about lunch trucks in heaven?
Lunch trucks in heaven.
My brother, if you really want to know, I started to go to lunch trucks on the DC side. But if it's going to be in heaven, it's going to be on the south side. So we're over.
There we go.
okay. All
Yeah.
right, here we go.
No,
Let's,
no, we're not going to
bef-
stop our conversation now.
yeah. 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 That moment of levity was brought to you by the Free Library of Brooklyn. Okay.
Right.
All right, folks. Here at the Upset Podcast, we always like to talk about relevant things from a biblical perspective, and there's nothing more biblical than the thing that I think all of us cherish almost more than anything else, and that is the idea of the church. But because this is February, we are not just talking about the church in general. We're talking about a very special portion of the church, a very special aspect of the church. And that is that part of the church that we call the Black church. Now, it's really kind of amusing because if somebody called it the white church, we would be up in arms, and you don't hear anything about the Latino church. And even there are a bunch of Asians, you don't hear the Asian church. It is a unique expression, the Black church. But the fact of the matter is this, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes right down to it, the idea of race is not something that rises up out of the Bible. It just doesn't. Race is something that we superimpose on the Bible. The idea of an ontological difference being made based upon physiognomy and appearance is something that's not in the Bible. People are not valued because of their skin color, their hair texture, or other physical identifying features. There just is no race. Did you hear that sound at all? Okay,
No.
then that tells me when I get to the good part, you're not going to hear that either, and so we'll just go by it, which
Pat will
will
sing.
which will vitiate
I got you, guys.
the entire thing. But anyway,
I got you.
there is no race in the Bible. So when it really comes down to it, race becomes a part of our lives in the late 1500s, the early 1600s. And if you would believe some of our leading scholars, for example, Nell Irvin Painter, Harvard historian, she tells us that race is not real. She says race is an idea. It's not really a fact in her book, The History of White People. Earlier than that, we learned from Dr. Kim Hall, who wrote the book Things of Darkness, that the concept of race is based upon an attempt to subjugate people by drawing lines of delineation. In other words, it's invented so that I can tell you that you're not like me and that people who are like me are superior to you. She made this statement: whiteness exists only when it's posed next to blackness. In other words, the idea of being white is simply a construct that allows certain people to say, I ain't you. And therefore, when I treat you bad, I can expect to be treated okay myself because I am not you. So whenever you start using terms like white or black, you're actually playing in the playground of people who subjugated you and oppressed you and want you to use their terminology so that they can continue that oppression. But be that as it may, the fact of the matter is this: even though race is not real, racism is. And even though when you use terms like white and black, you are using terminology created by the very racists who are trying to subjugate you, the reality of the matter is that the Black church is a thing. It actually exists. And because it exists, people have all sorts of different reasons and thoughts about what the Black church ought to be doing. Now, this part of the screen will feature several people of relative fame and notoriety talking about what the Black church is. Because when people say the Black church, is like people saying potato salad. Everybody says it and it sounds the same, but everybody makes it differently and has a different idea as to what it should be presented like. And the same is true about the Black church. People say the Black church and they expect a certain thing. They have a certain picture in their mind. I'm almost sure that you're not going to hear this, but here's Manning Marable. And you can't hear that, can you?
No.
He was saying some extraordinary stuff. He was talking about the fact that that the Black church was the only institution that the masters would allow to listen. Let me see if you can do this. If I can do this, that doesn't help either, does it? Yeah, I'll just use hand puppets and try to Symbolize it. That's Calvin Butts talking about the church being an economic incubator, a political developer. I'm not going to make you go through this. It's not that long, but watching people's lips move and not being able to hear them does not help you. Okay. So let's just move on from there and talk about this. This is so much fun, guys. I tell you, especially after you spend 6 hours putting it together. and
Oh.
and now this thing doesn't want to leave on its own. Basically, the Black church has been called upon to be the only civic organization in a broken community, an economic incubator, a political developer, a leadership skills developer, a community resource center, a mental health clinic, and a civic one-stop shop for all things. Now, the sad thing about it, ladies and gentlemen, is that creates something called a factotum in the Black community. That's a Latin term that simply means somebody who does it all. The Black church is called upon in the Black community to do everything. And when something or someone becomes a factotum, they tend to get burned out. The question that I would ask you is this: seeing that long list of things that we expect the Black church to do, how does that compare with what the Bible actually says the church should do? Because the Bible's pretty simple. The list ain't that long. The Bible says that the church is to be the ecclesia, those who are called out from the world. On this rock I will build my church, my called out ones. We're supposed to be the ecclesia, and we're supposed to be disciples and make disciples of others. Go into all the world and make disciples and teach people. We're supposed to be kingdom builders and ambassadors for the kingdom, beseeching men and women to be reconciled to Christ, called out, followers who lead others to follow, building up the kingdom and being ambassadors for a kingdom that is not of this world, and last but not least, to demonstrate the value that we have for the unseen God through acts of faith that we call worship as a part of the body of Christ, which is fellowship. Really simple. That's all the New Testament says the church is supposed to be. So if the church is supposed to be just those four things, but yet we have a laundry list of other things we ask the Black church to do and be, that should generate some real serious questions, ladies and gentlemen. For example, we should ask ourselves, is it acceptable to ask the Black church to perform duties that are not mandated by the scriptures? Is that acceptable? I'm not asking right or wrong, but is it acceptable? And also we have to ask ourselves, is it possible that if the church is doing so many other things that are not mandated by scripture, that it gets in the way of the main thing that it should be doing? You know that old saying, here's the main thing, and that's always to keep and make the main thing the main thing. That's the main thing. And we're wondering, is the church losing its ability to focus on the main thing because of all the other things that it does? Building credit unions and starting banks and becoming housing and economic developers. But the biggest problem is this. And this was going to be so impressive, ladies and gentlemen. I take my word for it. The more important question is a theological question that was posed by this brilliant woman, Dr. Jacqueline Rivers. She is of the Seymour Institute for Black Church and Policy Studies. And you won't be able to hear her ask the question that she is asking. And it was going to be so poignant and so significant. I was waiting to see Marlena's eyes open wide, you see. But now that you can't hear her, take my word when I tell you that what she is saying here is, what about this passage in Galatians? How can there be a Black church and a white church when we're supposed to all be one in Christ? The church is 2,000 years old. Shouldn't we be becoming more united than divided? If there is a division in the church, are we then vitiating the very claims of the gospel to make all things one? Is it legitimate to call a church by the thing that divides us? Now, you couldn't hear me. I'm so sorry that you couldn't hear, but the questions that are asked is, are we asking the church to do too much? Does it distract us from our goals? And is it against the very principle of the gospel and of the kingdom to call a church by that which divides it from others? Ladies and gentlemen, I turn these thoughts over now to people that you can hear, the wisest commentators and interlocutors to be found on earth, the members of the Upset Podcast. What say you one? What say you all?
Okay, those are some good questions. Let's just start by saying that.
First question is it acceptable to ask the church to do things that the Bible doesn't mandate it to do?
I think the church has
I think so.
demonstrated. I'm sorry, Chuck.
No, go ahead, GP.
You know, the church has demonstrated that sometimes you just got to do some things, even if they're not required of you, but because you have to. For example, against the war of illiteracy and ignorance, if the Black church did not step in, there would have been no HBCUs.
Okay.
And so, you know, the church has constantly sacrificed and poured into the community because it just had to. And so I'll let someone else chime in.
So
but
necessity demands that we do certain things.
Yeah.
Right. I think that there is a cultural context that leads a church in a community to do what it feels necessary to do to care for its community. And I think any church of any race in a community is affected by whatever the cultural, not just cultural situation, but whatever the actual situation is going on in, you know, in their neighborhood. I think it would be shameful if the church did not respond to its community cultural needs.
Okay.
I believe that is part of ministry. And while it is not mentioned in the Bible, I think that we have to look at it from a contextual point of view and in terms of what what the church chooses to do to interact with their community.
And also, Tally, doesn't the Bible also talk about taking care of the needy, those who are in need? And so those needs can be wide and diverse. And that's where the church steps in. Also, when it talks about speaking up for those who can't speak for themselves, you know, that's where politics and other matters come in, that the church has to speak for those, because if not, as someone has already said, who's going to do it for us?
Let me, and these are good points. And look, I don't have answers. My job is just to trouble Israel with questions. First of all, when it talks about taking care of the needy, it was talking about the church taking care of the needy members in the church. I mean, I just thought I would share that in the church, which is not the same as saying that if you see somebody hungry, you don't feed them. But the bigger question I ask is, you know, and this is what GP was saying earlier. Sometimes you do have to do things, but when you institutionalize things that you had to do as a matter of exigency, rather than just build a bridge to get you across, for example, we've got to create a credit union because the white banks won't let us, you know, amass our wealth and use it as a tool. But then 100 years later, you're still creating credit unions rather than spinning them off and letting them go. This goes to my second question. Can you get to the point where you become so busy in those things that are not a part of your original mandate that you begin to, you know, slack up a little bit on you're slacking on your working, you know, as Jay-Z might say. Isn't that what he says, Pat? You're slacking on your working? Yeah.
I'm Adventist. It's puzzling me because even as we go over this, you know, I look at even how the church have changed in the past 30 years, 40 years. And we're not even talking about regional conferences right now. We're talking about the Black church and what has happened in Black church. Yeah, you're right. And I'm trying to comb through, and I get what Marlene is talking about, but I'm trying to comb through what actually is it that that the church is meant to do. Forget meant to do, because I know you're going to jump on me for that. But when I look
no, I would never.
I know. When I look at civic, I'm thinking about my area. I'm thinking about community, and I think in the beginning, we turned church out in the beginning, the word church, New Testament church. I believe that the New Testament church has been turned around. I know you were talking about 1500s, 1600s, but even before that, it was never meant to be the way it is right now. And I think that it was always supposed to be community. Even if you want to get into the tithe thing and the offering thing and all of that, everything was supposed to help the community. And I think that's where the split comes out. You know, what you talk about civic, you talk about mental health. The reason why blacks wasn't going to do anything with mental health is because you had the church. You had someone to talk to in church, or you had that fellowship. So I can't go with the Bible version of what church should look like. Then
Oh no. Oh, no.
Well, totally. I could understand.
Yeah, well,
I could understand where you're coming from.
We've heard
Pat,
from
but
Imam Pat Muhammad there.
let me but let me ask this question, and specifically to you, Tally. In Matthew 25:35-40, this is where Jesus said, "For I was hungry and you gave me food."
Is he preaching?
And you know the rest.
No. We don't know the rest. I would like to hear you. I'd like to hear.
I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger. And then as we go down, and then they ask, well, when do we do that for you? And he said, what? Mm-hmm. To the least of these. Okay. Yeah. So with that Bible scripture lifted out in the context of what you just shared with us, Tally, are we misreading that as part of what the church does, or is this more of an individual focus?
You know, it is pretty clear. Well, no, it is not clear. Now, let me say it that way. That in the New Testament, when the church is being given its mandate, it is the very expression ecclesia, ekkaleo, to be called out, creates a paradigm where the church is here, separate from the rest of the world. And when it talks about feeding people and clothing people, it is talking about the church taking care of those who are part of its household. That does not mean you withhold your hand from those whom you come across, but the focus of the church was to care for the members of its household. For example, in the book of Acts, when you see the apostles pulling the deacons together, it wasn't to feed the community. It was to feed the members of the household.
Tally, was the government taking care of the community at that time?
Yes. And Paul creates the paradigm where he says we have to work cooperatively with governors. He talks about the ministers being a terror to the evildoer and to respect those. And then you go back to your Old Testament prophets who continually demanded that government do what government's supposed to do. Yeah. And the task of the people of God become to speak truth to that power, not to try to replicate it, but to speak truth to it. And as GP said earlier, there are times you have to do it because nobody else will. But the task is to make those who are supposed to do it, so that you can do what you're supposed to do, which is to declare the gospel, to make disciples, to create an atmosphere that allows for worship and fellowship, which is the main focus. The idea is to, it's like driving down the street and something goes wrong with your car and you get out and you fix your car. You don't open an automotive maintenance shop on the side. You fix the car and you go on and do what you were intentional about doing.
Well, this is why activism is so essential in the Black church. I'll let Tasha go.
No, I was going to say, I think the question that's still lingering for me, Tally, out of what you asked is, have we let those types of things, the community service and the other things that we're doing, the auxiliary things, overshadow, really teaching people about Christ and allowing them to develop a relationship with him? And I do think that, we kind of toe that line pretty closely sometimes, because we are always lauding all the community service that we're doing, all of the projects that we're doing, all of the groups that we formed. But you don't see as much emphasis on the people we've taught to develop their relationship with Christ. Of course, sometimes we use those things to bring them to a place where we can teach them. I do think that I hate to say we kind of use some of those things to lure people into, well, it's really pretty much developing a relationship so that when you do share it, they're willing to listen. But I do think and this made me think about the conversation we were having a couple of weeks ago with the young people wanting to go out and do community service in lieu of the sermon. Remember, we got into that whole discussion.
Pat's house painting services.
And I'm seeing a little bit of the correlation here. It almost looks like even though it's a good thing to serve others, are we putting too much focus on that to the point where we're not taking care of people's souls? And I'm just throwing it out there because I do think it is important for us to stick to our main thing as you start off. What is our main thing? And when we go back to the main thing, the other things kind of come along with it, but we don't want to overlook the main thing because people can be good people, but not know Christ. You know what I'm saying? Like they can learn to do good things. They can learn to serve people, but still not have a relationship with Christ. And that's really ultimately what we want for people.
Yes, to make and duplicate Black disciples. Amen.
Which brings me to question number 3, which is the main question. And that is this. The reason there's a Black church is because of the failure of white members of the church to treat with equality and equanimity people of color. So you had to do that. The Black church exists because of brokenness and failure. And now, 400 years later of apartheid in this country, we have now so institutionalized that divide that Black people fight. We are fighting to make sure. I mean, like, for example, if one of our guys goes and pastors in Potomac, we'll say, he left the brothers, even though Potomac is now Allegheny South. I mean, but the thing is that, is it acceptable to label a part of the community of Christ who says that his blood makes all things one? Is it acceptable to have as a label in that community something based on division? Marlena.
Called out.
When society has caused the division, we have to take care of the least of them. And so if the Black community has been isolated, it is our responsibility to take care of ourselves.
Okay. And so do you institutionalize that divide, Charles?
I think, unfortunately, yes, because in the context of regional conferences, you look at the history of regional conferences, no one stood up and say, I want to be in a conference by myself.
Right.
Okay. They were originally designed and called regional conferences. And then there's a whole definition as to why. Unfortunately, because of the reality of how we treat each other, because of racism, because of unfairness, we have had to, for the sake of survival, separate ourselves. I mean, there was a general conference where the general conference president, McElhaney was his name. Mm-hmm. And in the minutes of the general conference session then, when it was brought to the general conference session about, blacks and whites, we're coming together, as one church and all. He made a statement, and I'm paraphrasing. He said, it is not attainable at this time. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there's a reason he said that. Yeah. So as a result of that, we say, oh, okay, no problem. We'll have our own church. And because of racism, we have had to, split it, as we say. And we're still that way. Yeah, okay. Even though we have congregations from the Asian community, we have congregations from the African community, we have congregations from the Chinese community, in the regional conferences. But unfortunately, because of the reality and the seat of evil that is in this country, we have had to answer and fight racism as best we can. And so I'm saying in the context of the Adventist church, unfortunately, we do have a black church.
Okay. And so it continues. Is this is this a testament to the fact that the blood of Christ lacks efficacy in this area? That he can overcome harlotry, drug addiction, alcohol, and cigarette smoke. But that white and black thing, the Lord say, hey, look, I tried that one, but my blood don't work on that. You know? We're gonna
well,
come
the
up with something
racism
else.
is deep seated. I mean, look at the Israelis and the Palestinians, and you could go down the list.
I think the Beacon Network made mention of the fact it's like the split between Israel and Judah. Now, that was a little different. That was a matter of theology and orthodoxy. Israel was idolatrous, you know, and as such, they separated themselves, as Hosea said, leave them alone. They are joined to their idols. This isn't a matter of idolatry. This is a matter of, it's not even a matter of culture. We say it's culture, but it's not even a matter of culture. It's a matter of race and money.
I think for some though, Tally, I think it can be cultural, because I've known people, and I've had experiences where I've gone to, you know, churches that were very diverse, but the worship styles were not what I'm used to, or, you know, culturally what I'm used to.
You can go to Ebenezer and find a church that is more reserved. I mean, Ebenezer is more reserved.
That's true. But chances are you're going to find some church that fits your, whether it's black or what. That's what I'm saying. So sometimes.
But it doesn't happen because of race. You look, I can take you down south and they'll throw a rattlesnake at you and tell you dance around with it. I mean, so it's not. In other words, it's not like white people do this, black people do that, and never the twain shall meet. It is, we call it culture, but it is actually simply race. You know, it's just race.
Listen, all I gotta say is that we still need the black church. And no, I don't want to. Tally, you're talking some good stuff here, but I mean,
I'm just asking us to think. That's all.
No. And I'm with you at that. I grew up in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn. And no, I didn't grow up there. I grew up going to church there.
Okay.
And GP, you were just talking about gentrification when we were talking about the 25 miles per hour, et cetera, et cetera. I remember growing up in a place, and remember the points that you just used, okay? The civic, the economic, the political, you know, when you look at all of those things, I don't know where I would be today in each one of those categories if I did not have the black church. And not the Black Seventh-day Adventist church, because up the block was New Jerusalem Baptist, and up the block from there was we all had church in the area that we're all gonna go to this grocery store, and we're all gonna shop, and we're all gonna use this seamstress. It was like that even in the 70s, coming out 70s, 80s. So I think that even though it's not a mandate by God not by God, in the Bible, for us to have these different elements, I still think this is necessary to have those credit unions. I still think it's necessary to still be in have a leadership developing. Our Pathfinders is different than the white Pathfinders. Oh man, did I say it?
And how is that? Unpack that.
They have drum corps. They have drum corps, right?
Don't we have a commercial? Let's give Pat a chance.
But they don't do the Harlem. They don't do the Harlem Shake.
No, the way that we develop our leaders are different than the way that they develop their leaders. And they may develop their leaders in a great, but we develop our leaders are totally different than the way that they do. So when I'm not looking at black leadership. I'm sorry. I'm not looking at leadership skills just from a standpoint of just church. I'm also looking at it as even a community.
So when we sing that song now, and
I don't sing that song. I don't sing that one.
What song is that?
You know, when the praise teams have knocked it out now, you know, because we go and watch other people, you know, praise by proxy for us now. But you know, we get to that part where we say, for it reaches to the highest mountain, unless it's white and black, and it goes to the lowest valley, unless it's white and black. The blood that gives me strength, unless it's white and black, from day to day, unless it's white and black. So are we basically, let's just go ahead and acknowledge it, that the blood of Christ can't conquer that. That's what we're saying?
but I don't know why we're saying it like it's something that needs to be conquered. I think we're almost painting this picture that the black church is something that shouldn't
You see
exist.
my eyes getting wide here, Tasha? I mean, are you saying that the schism that is the great scar on humanity, that is the original sin of America, doesn't need to be conquered?
No,
Is
I'm not
that
talking
what I'm
about.
hearing from
But
the
we have to
communications
separate.
director of the Allegheny East Conference of Black People?
Yeah,
We have
next
to
year.
separate the black church from racism. I think we're combining them, and I don't think that's fair
The
because
black church exists because of racism.
it may exist because of racism,
Right.
but
So
it's not a racist entity.
No, it exists because of racism, which means that what started it is the scar, the brokenness of humanity. The idea of the gospel is to unbreak humanity. And the way that you know the gospel is working, when the things that were caused by the breaking begin to disappear. For example, drunkenness is caused by human brokenness. And the way you know that the gospel is being effective and the blood is being efficacious is when drunkenness begins to cease.
Okay, so
Ladies and gentlemen, we're getting somewhere now.
No, okay, so what you're saying is we'll know that it has ceased when we see integrated churches. Is that what you're saying? Because we can look like it, but still not have it in here. You see what I'm saying? So
sure, I agree with that.
Because I worship in a black church doesn't mean that I wouldn't worship in.
What will heaven look like, Tosh?
Oh, I think it will be full of all kinds of people, but we'll be different people then. We'll be, made over.
Tosh said we're going to get paint jobs.
No, what I'm saying is,
we'll go in the line and we'll stop at the Earl Shy
worked out of us, and we won't even see color. Like all that stuff will be eradicated.
Wait a minute. I will cease to be my color when I go to heaven?
No, what I'm saying is those things, those earthly mindsets that we have, like, it's going to be different.
Just going to disappear, huh?
Yo, don't listen to Tally. Everybody who's listening to me right now, we're going to continue this black church, and we're going to continue voting in who we need to vote in. We're going to march when we need to march, because they just don't. The community, we need our own community. That's what we need.
and it's not just for Adventism either. It's global, the black church.
I'm sorry, one second. Say that again, Tally. We need our what?
We need our own separate community.
We need to be able to be who we are. We need to be able to express.
No, I want you, Pat, I want you to take that now and think sincerely about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the 1960s, there was the incursion into this nation, into our country, of a large wave of people immigrating from the islands of the Caribbean.
Sure.
Black Americans, and even to this very day, I used to pastor the West Philadelphia Church, which has a majority population from the Caribbean. It gets whispered, but it still gets talked about. Them and us. The practice. I mean, there were marked differences in the way people culturally handled their affairs when they went to church, if they came from certain places or if they came from other places. Before that, it was Southern blacks and Northern blacks.
I agree.
There are always differences that cause people to recognize that, wait a minute, I might not be comfortable with what you're doing. But what we're saying now, look, I pastored a church that was largely Caribbean and loved it. I mean, let me tell you, this thigh right here is the size that it is because of yellow yam and ackee, and I want more of it, but I loved it. I mean, and so we've learned how to move past that. But when it comes to white and black, which is the original sin of America, the blood of Christ can't conquer that.
I'm not going to say can't conquer it, but, I do think that God, that the Holy Spirit needs to work through what we can't work through. And there's some things. Yeah, I said it. I said it. There are certain things. There are certain aspects of worship that we need that is not even accepted at other places. And I think that's the biggest problem. The biggest problem is the acceptance of where it is, and for us to be who we are, why we need our own. It's not that we don't want to conform or we don't want to belong. It's that they don't want to belong, or they don't want to, they tolerate us. And and it's the reason why we need to continue to have the black church, and they can have the white church because they do. They just move it in silence. They still have the white church. They have the Korean church because they need to do what they need to do in order to see what they need to see. I'm not backing off of that.
I can see it now. Where Pat? We'd be up in heaven. So where Pat at? So
Well,
he didn't back off of it.
Yeah, I'm on the east side.
and we,
my
Tosh, you were going to say something.
No, I was going to say, I feel like a lot of it is on, when it comes to the black church gets a lot of heat, but our other ethnicities, that's that's how they worship. That's their culture. We pacify it a little bit. Like it's not even a question. That's what they need. And we cater to. But when we say what we need, suddenly we're being, we're continuing the racism that exists. So why is it that when it's the black church, we have to make all these concessions when other ethnicities?
I think the bottom line, it's love. We teach our children to sing the song. Jesus loves the little children, all little children.
He does.
Red and yellow, black and
white. But here's the pivotal point. Jesus loves, and we don't.
That is true.
But Charles, you make the point. The point then is what's supposed to happen is the gospel is supposed to change people who could not do what Jesus did. And what's supposed to be the biggest witness is when people who could not do what Jesus does start doing it. When you institutionalize the things that are a reflection of the failure to be like Christ, aren't you failing the gospel at that point? I'm doing this, of course, too.
You're provoking.
But you're right.
The blood reaches to the highest mountain, but it got to get there.
Right.
But then the Spirit of Christ also expects us to take up the deficiencies in society. So, because the church is still within the society, within the culture. So, a lot of times the church has its own racial aspects, we know, the same as the world. And so if the church doesn't step up to help those who are marginalized, then who will? So even if it takes institutionalism, so be it. But we have to do the work of Christ.
So you're saying basically that by maintaining churches that are a reflection of the unique characteristics of the Black community, that we're catering to the weakness of community by reflecting it and ministering in that way, correct?
I wouldn't say we're catering to weaknesses. I think that are.
It's brokenness. I mean, racism created this brokenness, and so
there is nothing wrong. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with contextualized ministry to meet needs.
Yeah, right.
There's nothing wrong with
so
acknowledging.
like having a church that's all gay would be, in keeping with that.
That's fine.
If they need community, go ahead.
That's it. I'm sick of you.
Like whatever you say, yes, fine.
Well, I mean, using some examples right in our own backyard here, when African Americans intentionally want to worship and join white Adventist churches.
Come on, Chuck.
That white church becomes a Black church.
Why
is it? Did the white people make themselves Black, or did they take
problems?
Same thing with our schools. I remember back in the day when CUC, Columbia Union Conference, college was predominantly white.
It was Caucasian Union College at the time.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now it's colored
and it changed, and we can all go down the list. I mean, even churches in Philadelphia, the Boulevard Church on Roosevelt Boulevard was a white church.
Yep.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it is now a Black church. How does that happen?
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So we have to ask ourselves that question, Tally.
Yeah.
Has our love diminished so much that we will not carry out the love of Christ by intentionally worshiping and intermingling with our brothers and sisters of another race?
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. The onus is not on us. I don't think we have Black churches because Black people don't want to be with people of other races. I think when we come, they leave. That's not. I mean, we can't. What are we supposed to do? We become black churches because they won't stay.
Yeah.
And so
we chase them off. Yeah, I mean, we
and
run them off
by being us. I mean, and that's not across the board. Of course, we know we have, several churches, even within Allegheny East, that have a mixed congregation. But, look, we're talking about the majority that, that we see.
And it happens in other denominations as well. If you want to look up,
right.
There's a black and white documentary that was filmed years ago. It was called A Time for Burning. Look it up. There may be clips on YouTube, but this was an experiment. I believe it was the Lutheran or the Presbyterian church. They had two churches in the South on the same street, practically. One was white, one was black. And they sent a white pastor to come down and try to bring those two congregations together. You ought to see the documentary. It's powerful. And basically it boiled down to the white congregations didn't want black folk in their church. Mm-hmm. They just flat out said it. In fact, this pastor who tried to get them to relate to each other invited members of the black church to visit and worship in the white church that was literally within a quarter mile of each other. And there was a big uprising in the white church. We can't have black people worshiping with us.
Yeah, man, we too forgiving too, man. Let's have our own.
Yeah, but that's the reality of what we're living in now.
Yeah. Pat made a point there, and I mean, there's a limit. You should only forgive so far.
That's right. I said
it. I mean, I remember there was this carpenter that I knew who lived in the Middle East who said, you forgive 70 times 7, but obviously he didn't go to Andrews. He didn't realize that there's a limit to. You should only forgive so far. Correct, Pat?
Yeah. Yes, you're exactly right. And I'm going to stay on that. No. But as much as, again, I feel a way right now when I see a church, and I'll go the other way, the other way, Tally. I can't stand our churches who were in black neighborhoods. It gentrified, and now the black church wants to come out. That's not what I'm talking about. I still think there's so much that needs to be done where you can, what Marlena said, there are still homeless around. And matter of fact, we don't do the demographic study to know exactly what we do need in our community, because not everyone's hungry in our community. Not everyone needs, now we're moving to a mental health type thing. I got it. I got that side of it. But there are many of our churches, especially in urban areas, that are not accepted. What has happened with the Memphis 5, people may say, oh, that's not racism. Yeah, there's something going on peer to peer. There's something going on inside of our own group that we need to be able to discuss, that cannot be discussed in the white church. No matter how you look at it, it just cannot be discussed there. So there are so many things. Why is it that the clerk's report is so long on Sabbath mornings? It's because in the 40s and the 50s, not everyone could read, right? So everything that you got in church, the reason why church was so long back then was because that was our center point. Like you said earlier, Tally, it was a civic duty at church to make sure everybody knew what was going on in that community. And I think that we still need that. Do we need it 100%? Do we need it all the way through? No, we don't need it like that anymore, but we still need it because we're still oppressed people in a whole lot of areas.
I raised this issue because we're right up against the clock now, and we can continue to go on. But I raised this issue not because I think that people don't have the right to fellowship with people who are comfortable. I wanted to challenge us and make us uncomfortable with the fact that
you did. Thank you.
That we have. When you allow your enemy to define how you will respond, you now capitulate to weakness, to the point that weakness, it's like learning how to limp and making it a cultural thing.
Good point.
And and like Tasha was saying, and I loved it. I caught Tasha with one. I said, so what's gonna be like in heaven? Tasha said, we go all get new paint jobs.
Oh,
I mean,
have Jesus. We'll have him face to face. He'll fix it.
you know, I mean, we'll still be,
Well-
you know, in heaven we'll still be evolving. You know, we'll still be learning and
Right.
growing. You know,
But Tally, you really had us focus on the real issue, and the real issue is love. That's
Mhm.
really what it is.
Yep.
We have trouble harnessing that. Even blacks in the black church and whites in the white church,
Sure.
we still have a problem harnessing love, and that is the issue. As Sister Turner used to say, "What's love got to do with it?"
Yeah,
Mercy.
love-
That's not biblical. That piece is not
Sister Turner. All right.
Love cannot be legislated. And
Mhm.
so Tally was, suggesting earlier, is God the solution? Is he enough to solve this issue? But the question is,
so still a
are we
question for you,
willing
GP.
to surrender our agendas, our desires, our selfishness, our sinfulness,
Biases.
and submit to God's will?
mercy.
You know,
That's
it is the center, the focus, the emblem of the Christian church is a cross, which is the reflection and the representation that says, I am willing to die. You know, and even more so, the symbol of it is like Paul says, we preach Christ crucified, yea, him risen, recognizing that what appears to be death is an opportunity for God to demonstrate his resurrection power. So if I'm with people that don't like me, but we both claim the blood of Christ, and we both say that we are his followers, then we both have to be willing to allow each other to hurt each other, knowing that the resurrection power of Christ can bring us beyond the pinch and the pain of evolving our relationship. But in America, it's hard because racism has created such an ugly scar. I looked at some of the things in the comments section. One person said they don't like us. Okay, okay.
Well,
I know some men who don't like women. You know,
right.
I know some people who don't like folks from the islands.
True.
And
the other way around.
And the other way around.
No.
Yeah,
The reason
on
why I
that-
say that is because it is true.
People don't like people.
And when you started your lead on this topic, you had us focus in on what the biblical definition of what church is and how it's to act and to take care of its own. And while that is true, I think the Adventist church for years have had that attitude, but just didn't verbalize it. Oh, you want us to help you? Get baptized. Now you're a member.
I close with this witness.
Don't close yet. Before you close.
No, I'm just saying my proctoring this thing, because I've learned the limitations of the blood in this gathering. So
and forgiveness.
But there's a gentleman by the name of Randy McKinney. He served in the Marines over in Afghanistan, where he killed quite a few people from that area. And he learned to hate Muslims. I mean, literally learned to hate them. He came back and he was still filled with such hatred. He decided that life wasn't really worth living anyhow. But if he was going to die, he'd go out in a blaze of glory. And in the Indianapolis area, he discovered, not in the Indiana area, rather, he discovered that a mosque had been built when he was over fighting Muslims in Afghanistan. A mosque had been built in his community. He got together some dynamite. He was making a bomb, and he was going to, look at the place.
Story. Go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah, he's going to look at the place and put the bomb there because he wanted to kill as many of them as he could. And he went to the mosque, and he met the attendees of the mosque. And one of the men there grabbed him and hugged him in tears and welcomed him. And he said, all right, I'll stay a little bit longer. And he stayed a little longer. And then he came back. And before he knew it, he had forgotten all about the bomb. He is now a Muslim, married to one of the members of the mosque. And they said, why did this happen? He said, love did this. They loved me so much that I had to give up my hatred.
Absolutely.
So maybe we should all take our shahada
No.
And-
Not that way. But you know,
because I
Tally,
mean, because it seems to be that this, the God that was there was able to help people get over
Mhm.
that hatred and that hump.
Yeah, that's one by one, right?
but if you
One
really
person
want
at a time.
if
No,
you
this is a
really
whole
wanna
congregation, Marlene.
No, but
Tally,
it converted the one person.
Yeah, it did.
if you really want to talk about upsetting Tally, and going through this, yeah, I'm uncomfortable. If you want to be,
I'm uncomfortable.
if you really have to be vulnerable about it, and I know we are, we're here talking through this, it burns a little bit, because it really shouldn't be this way, but in some cases it has to be. So I have to say that in listening to this, and even going over, even from the green room coming out, and you have to do some introspection on your own life to see where deep down that you have to change in order to accept what God wants for us and not what people want for us. That's the hardest part of all of this, because in going through this, I do get angry. And I do get, I've watched about how we had to make our own films, our own black films, and how we exploit each other. I know we're talking about the church, but even in the entertainment world, we have done the same exact thing coming through this. So it's a whole lot of introspection that we have to do on our own lives, because there's going to be a lot of surprises in heaven. That there's not an east side and there's not a south side of heaven where there's comfortability, and you
There's a
guys
south
stay
side.
over there.
South side.
Yeah, no, but I mean, it's true. I had a choir at Andrews University, and they would
I
come
remember
to
that choir.
us sing, right? Yeah, they came to Allegheny East one time, and I remember one of our white professors came to me and said, "I love when you guys sing. When we get to heaven, I'm coming on your side of heaven to hear you all sing." And he was serious when he said it. But I also remember the burn of what it was like when they wouldn't allow us to bring our drums in PMC, and they wouldn't allow us to sing gospel in PMC at Andrews University. And so some of that ice still has to fall off of my own life, or my own experiences, for me to turn around and say, okay, this is where we need to go. So, and what does it, Chuck? You said it. It's love. That's what it is.
Who was it? Gene Smith asked the question, does that mean we are not truly converted? It means that we are not fully converted. I mean, we
like
grow, we evolve, we wrestle. But the key is when you start allowing, don't tell Adventists they aren't sides.
Secrets out.
She knows that's a part of my sermons with young people. It's like, Jesus gonna call all the Adventists together and be like, don't tell anybody.
Right? It's
I'm the only ones here.
But the question still remains. We have Black History Month because we live in a world that is divided, and we're still trying to do it. But does the church follow the pattern of the world? Remember this: when they said, Jesus, teach us how to pray, he said, acknowledge the sovereignty and the holiness and the otherness of God. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
Amazing.
But right after you do that, acknowledge the mission of the church, which is to make life here the way it is up there.
Wow.
Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth the same way it is in heaven. And so we have to ask ourselves, are the things that we're doing on earth a reflection of heaven, or are they a reflection of earth?
Sorry,
Good
Tally.
point.
Let's end this because Tally has upset me today. In a good way, though. In a good way, honestly. In a good way.
Well, ultimately, we have to ask ourselves about the question of love.
Yeah.
It really does boil down to that. It is as simple as that. And we're all challenged with that. We're all challenged. We have the capability, but it has to be in the heart. You have to have the desire to love. And loving means looking beyond the break of a person's faults and shortcomings.
Pastor Williams, you are on.
That's a nice way.
I'm still trying to envision the lunch trucks in heaven. I think that would be so cool, right?
Soul food.
Yeah.
All right. Wow. This is a very thought-provoking conversation, Tally. Thank you for
it's a pleasure. I enjoyed this.
Out, making us think about how we do things, why we do things. There's still some work we need to do on the inside.
Until we get to heaven and we get repainted, Tasha, we got.
I did not mean. Listen, we're not going to.
Tasha said we'll all be changed in a moment, in a twinkling of an eye.
Outside,
Callie, that's not what she said. She said that we all going to be colorblind. That's what she said.
Well, this is my thing. When we get to heaven, all these things we try to make. Oh, God doesn't like this guy. When we get to heaven, we see some of those things that. A lot of it will be answered for us. We can't debate it anymore. We can't have question about it anymore. And the person that can verify everything is right there. So, I feel like heaven just will, we won't have to have these conversations. We go right to the source. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like heaven is just when you get there.
So we won't know who's black and who's white until somebody next to us start clapping
matter.
off the beat. Say,
Hey, GP, someone wants to know, what does your shirt say?
Go ahead.
It says humbled, blessed, creative, and unique. So shout out to all the HBCUs. I believe there are 106 in America.
Wow.
So much love to them.
There you go.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Yeah, and all our themes this month will, we're celebrating Black History Month, and so we have some interesting topics coming up.
Benjamin, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I saw that. You said, I hope Jesus doesn't have a paint job when we get there.
No, he's gonna stay black. Blackity black.
Oh wow! But no, so look forward to the rest of what we have for Black History Month. We're going to be talking about all kinds of topics. We have so many good ones. Like, we're trying to actually narrow them down. But if you have an idea that you want us to kind of throw in there, don't forget to reach out to us. Email us at upset@aecsda.com. Email us. Let us know what you want us to talk about as it relates to Black History Month. We'll try to incorporate some of it into future podcasts.
I'm going to see if my finger touches Charles' head from the ceiling.
If it does, I'm leaving the studio.
Yes. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget, the end of this month, we're having our second birthday. We will have been on the air 2 years. And
really?
So, yeah, 2 years, right?
2 years.
And so we may actually have some of our guests join us, some of our most frequent commenters, and we may actually bring some of you on to join us on.
Ooh, that'll be great for our last podcast.
So email us if you want to be one of those guests considered to join us right here live and give your commentary outside of the chat, but right here on the screen. So email us if you think you might want to join us for our birthday show. All right, guys, it's been a great discussion. As always, we thank all of our listeners and viewers for chiming in. The chat had a lot of great comments once again, so check those out on YouTube and Facebook if you're on the other platform. And we'll see you. We see you, Tiff. Email us. We'll see you guys next Sunday, because if it's Sunday, it's Upset Podcast.
All right.
I thought it was Meet the Press.
You said Meet the Depressed?
Meet the Press. Yeah, that too. All right, everybody. Have a great night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.